Vera with us. Oh, great.
Thank
So
you.
good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, Vera,
Yes,
hello.
you're very, very welcome. We have Dolores with you. You met her. We
Yes.
also have Henna here from...
I have two screens, so if I'm looking here,
Oh,
you're on the
okay.
screen.
We're over at the other one, Vera. Have a look at the other screen. That's us.
That's what I have to do so that you see me. I know. I know it's a little confusing, but
We're so honored to have you here with us, Vera Sharav. You are a survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and you're a human rights activist, and especially about medical freedom, as I understand it. And we have spoken before. We think you have very, very relevant information, especially at this present day, to spread across the world and to make people aware of. So please introduce yourself and please give us your view on the present situation.
okay. I formed an organization, the Alliance for Human Research Protection, which has been focusing on unethical medical experiments. I was shocked when I was sent an article from the American Psychiatric Journal about an experiment in which 28 veterans were deliberately challenged in order to have a psychotic relapse so that doctors could learn the pathophysiology of the illness.
Oh my God.
I was so shocked, and I sent a copy to several psychiatrists who by then I had been working with, and I asked them, am I reading it right? And they said yes. So that began for me a whole process of filing complaints with the Office of Human Research Protection, so-called, and it just developed from one to the other to the other. My complaint was found to be valid, of course, but it took them 4 years. And this was funded by the National Institute of Mental Health. So my background, in a sense, was rekindled, if you will. And I began to do a lot of research about what really went on about the Holocaust. And of course, the literature has changed quite a bit. The fact that we are here today, I can't tell you how I feel, really. I never thought I would live to see the day that I would again have to be quite afraid. Because I know where this can go. And let me go through some of the points that I prepared.
Yes, please, go ahead.
The virus, as you all, I'm sure, realize, is being exploited to maintain a state of panic and fear, and to condition people to obey, very simple, obey government orders, no matter how ridiculous. Propaganda, censorship, and surveillance technology control both the narrative and our ability to communicate with each other keeps getting curtailed. Now, these assaults on our freedom, I definitely think foreshadow the plan for instituting a totalitarian dictatorship. Fear and propaganda are the psychological weapons the Nazis used to maintain their genocidal regime. And yes, as a child survivor of that tyranny, I don't make this comparison lightly, and it gives me absolutely no pleasure. As my perspective is really grounded in those very early years. I was 3.5 when my family was chased out of our home in Romania. and my entire world collapsed. We were herded into a concentration camp where my father died of typhus, an infectious disease that was rampant in the overcrowded and unsanitary conditions into which they put Jews. He died, and of course that meant that I wound up being half an orphan, and in those circumstances that's very, very terrorizing, because always the fear that I would lose my mother. Nazi propaganda demonized Jews as spreaders of disease. So we were stigmatized, and we were regarded as a menace to public health. Now this should seem familiar, because the accusation of spreaders of disease is once again being used as a weapon to demonize us, because we object to government-dictated medical interventions. In industrialized Western countries, doctors are forbidden to prescribe medicines that they know are effective against viral infections. Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. There are many more no longer patented drugs and actually supplements. Why is the public being misinformed by public health officials? Why are we told that the only cure is vaccine, when that's not true? The real virus that's infecting public health across the world now is eugenics. That was the basis, that was the glue that held the Nazi regime together. Eugenics. This racist ideology declares that some human beings are inferior, genetically inferior. Therefore, you can do anything you want with them. Now, eugenics led to forced sterilization policies in Europe and the United States. In Nazi Germany, it was on a far more massive scale. But let's face it, the crime is no different. When really, eugenics is the kind of poison that particularly infects the academic community, both medical, public health for sure, but academia. And what connects public health and eugenics together is both regard some people as more valuable than others, and in order to implement, they need government to give them legal license, and they need police enforcement. And we are seeing this arising all over. Police enforcement of medical interventions. Now, their rationale is that they're doing things for the greater good. The Nazis did too. They said for the folk, for the health of the folk, we've got to get rid of the bad genes, clean the gene pool, okay? And public health now, yeah, they talk about, oh, the greater good. Problem is, what is the greater good? Who decides? Who gave anyone a license to decide what's the greater good? By sacrificing individual rights. You see, there's the razor edge. Now, the most important lesson of the Holocaust is that when doctors deviate from their personal moral responsibility to do no harm to the individual, all hell breaks out. That's when doctors join ranks with government and they become government agents. As government agents, yes, they're supposedly issuing directives for the greater good, but they no longer have a personal responsibility. This is terribly important. The Hippocratic Oath makes the doctor absolutely directly responsible. The same is true of the Nuremberg Code, which is, I believe, our strongest legal, moral right. The voluntary, informed consent is absolutely essential. And that has legal standing. It's been cited by judges. I know of 2 cases because I was involved in them, but it's never been challenged as a legal document. It just hasn't been used enough, I think. Now, the first victims of the Holocaust were German infants and young children under the age of 3. The policy that was signed by Hitler in 1939 was the T4 program. This was the first industrialized medical murder project. The emphasis is always medical murder. It then moved from the little children to children of all ages. These are disabled children. You see, they're not perfect. That was the rationale. And then it went to the mentally ill, and then the disabled, all kinds of disabilities, and finally, the nursing home, the long-term care residents. They cleaned them all out. This was operational from 1939 to 1945. Medical doctors selected each victim whom they deemed unfit for life. This was all done with medical doctors at every step of the way. That's one of the reasons that the medical establishment really doesn't want to go near the Holocaust, because they always portrayed the Nazi barbarian doctors. No, no, no. These were not. These were academically affiliated. The academies in Germany and Austria used the human tissue of victims to do all kinds of anthropological research. Oh yeah, they were totally involved. But only 23 doctors were tried in the doctors' trial at Nuremberg. In all, that T4 program, about 300,000 German children and adults were murdered. Now, in 2020, governments in the Western wealthy countries issued decrees forbidding doctors from providing life-saving treatments to elderly people in nursing homes. This was all across Western Europe and the United States. Before New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo issued the executive order forbidding hospitals to treat COVID-infected elderly and to send them to nursing homes instead, he knew what he was doing. He stated the virus in nursing homes would be like fire through dry grass. The dry grass were the people. That's one thing that eugenicists do this all the time. They use euphemisms, especially to denigrate people that they're going to be harming. Now, an estimated 80% of COVID-19 death casualties actually are the elderly. I cannot help but make the comparison. I think it's pretty obvious. T4 and the nursing home debacle. This is a signal. The nursing home slaughter, it's a signal of what the end game is planned, you know, what the plan is about. Now, the final solution, which was to exterminate the entire European Jewry, the implementation of the final solution was facilitated by IBM. IBM provided the punch card technology. You see, the census database used IBM punch card technology. And that explains the rapid identification, roundup, the tracking, the deportation, the imprisonment, the tattooing of human beings as though they were cattle, and then the extermination. Now, more than 6 million Jews were exterminated, as were millions of other people whom the regime deemed unfit, inferior. The coerced COVID vaccination and green passports are a throwback to the Nazi regime. They are discriminatory. That's their purpose. They're discriminatory and they're intimidating. They're creating a two-class society, apartheid. Will the next step be ghettos, detention camps? Will we have chips and tattoos inserted in our bodies? They exist. They've been financed by Bill Gates. Many of these surveillance technologies have been financed by Bill Gates. Gates has repeatedly articulated the eugenics goal of population control. And he has connected vaccines to that project. In a 2010 TED forum, he stated, and I quote, "The world today has 6.8 billion people. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, reproductive health services, we lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. In 2020, Bill Gates stated, the final solution to the pandemic will be a vaccine. He knows what he's talking about. He's old enough. The master plan, which is called Global Reset, or the New World Order, which Carl Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, formulated and provided the ideological framework for. I won't go in too much into it, but I want people, you, the audience, it behooves you to look at two sources. One is Klaus Schwab's own writings, which are posted on the Economic Forum. The second source is a new investigative report. It's called Schwab Family Values. It's by an investigative reporter, Johnny Vedmore, who uncovered previously concealed documents about the activities of both Klaus Schwab and his father, Eugene Schwab. the evidence is so damning that I want people to read it themselves. Just to give you a slight hint. One of the things that comes out is that, well, Eugene Schwab and the firm that he was the manager of, which was a Swiss firm, Escher Weiss. They had a big factory in Germany, in Ravensburg, where the Schwabs lived. What you learn is that, first of all, they provided all kinds of armaments to the Nazis, including hydroelectric power and all sorts of heavy duty stuff. He had at his factory forced laborers. Ravensburg was a very big center for slave labor. Klaus Schwab headed the Sulzer Escher Weiss company. So it's the company that his father managed, but he expanded it and did quite a few other things in terms of technological improvements. But this too, they dealt with, in the 1960s, global nuclear arms race. They provided nuclear weapons to South Africa during the apartheid wars. All I can say in closing really is that, I want to repeat, our most important moral and legal right as human beings is that Nuremberg Code, which the judges rendered after the doctors' trials. If we're to preserve our freedom, our inalienable rights as human beings, and our dignity, for heaven's sakes, we have to stand up, as I know you are and most of you listeners are, because the alternative is to be enslaved in Schwab's global reset, which is a chilling resurrection of the Nazi totalitarian state, the Fourth Reich. That's it. I can't,
Thank you, Vera. Thank you. You are so valuable in this fight right now. We are so many people supporting you and also standing up together. And this brings such solemn note to everything that we're doing, like how extremely serious this is and extremely important it is. Like I said before, for every human being to make the right choices.
That's right. We've got to protect our rights as human beings. No, because that's on the line. They really do want to have us as robots that they can click, and if you're disobedient, you get knocked out. And the fact that they are determined, and this is, Bill Gates is one of, and Schwab is, he's an intellectual architect. They're very serious, and this has been going on actually since eugenics was introduced in the UK and the United States. It is a continuum. I mean, there is a segment, a level, and yes, it is a cabal. These are the oligarchs, the global oligarchs, who they determine how our economy runs, who shall live, who shall die, they decide. And for whatever reason, a lot of it has to do economic, this was suddenly the launching. None of this happens by chance.
Mm.
This
No,
is not. This is not messy democracy where you've got to. No. This goes by plan, very, very methodically.
Hannah, you want to comment on
Spirit.
that? Yeah.
Want to break our spirit, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, most people really are going along. They're following orders.
And that's what surprises so many of us awake people, like how when it's all there out in the open, when if you just take a couple of hours and actually look into the facts, look at the information, the links that you are talking about, it's all out there in the open. It's so shocking that people cannot see it when it's even right in front of their eyes.
They don't, it's as if children, who are taught not to touch fire, they won't go near it. They realize that it's dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is and I've said that to you before, but the worst are the ones with PhDs and MDs. That's the worst.
Exactly.
They really are.
And the power that they have in this society when.
Of course.
Yeah.
But they're going along like this.
Exactly.
They don't want to ask questions.
Vera, I wanted to just personally also say thank you for your unwavering voice and your extraordinary contribution to humanity. It's truly an honor to get to meet you like this. And I just wanted to comment on, you were speaking about the Nuremberg Code and the informed consent. And something that has really, struck me during this pandemic narrative is that nobody has questioned this mass masking of the people. This is also a medical experiment. We've never studied what does it do, to people with degenerative brain conditions or pregnant ladies or children. We don't know what it's doing. I mean, some people are now finding out what it's doing and doctors are studying it, but they are being censored. They're being silenced.
Oh, absolutely. But I can tell you one thing, which is a clue as to us being a laboratory. I had a call yesterday from Columbia University, and this was a survey that they were doing, and they wanted to ask how COVID has impacted on the family. And I said, I don't have time now, but I realized, of course, they've got lots of studies going on that, on every kind of level. It's giving, look, this is the source of income for them. Yeah. Remember, you need to do projects, right? And so this is a perfect, they have so many different angles. How does it affect the blacks? How does it affect the disabled? Really, and all of this is outrageous because they won't let people live their lives as free people. That's it's very interesting because I realized that they must have a zillion grants out there, okay, for various aspects of this, which they then will put into, collections and whatever, but it's a totally false story.
Yeah. It's like they're generating this culture of mistrust and betrayal, by just blaming everybody. Healthy people are being treated as criminals and breathing is a crime. And it's extraordinary just witnessing how everything's collapsing so fast.
This is but you see, this is really I actually, Bobby Kennedy cited, I think it was Himmler was asked, during the Nuremberg trials, how they managed to have the people just go along. And he said that was easy. Just keep them in fear. So that's the protocol.
And I wonder if it's even more fear causing for the people to come to see the reality of the scenario,
That's just it. Of course, that you would think that, yes, if people actually did open their eyes, that they would, shoo them away. But that's what we're waiting. But instead, they're rolling out, here, look at these green passports. And that whole green thing is, of course, also part of this population control. It's, it's It's our breathing that causes the carbon monoxide. I mean, it's such nonsense.
Yeah.
It's not their emission. You know, I mean, we talk about Bill Gates. I have a whole thing. Somebody made sort of a pictorial list of his toys, you know, his toys and his different estates and all that, and his bombardier plane. Oh, that doesn't emit anything, right?
Or the weapons industry. How come the green people are not demanding that we end all war? Yeah, that's been one of my my red flags. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, right. They're totally in the armament business. I mean,
and
that's one thing comes out with Schwab. Yeah,
and that's what's so perplexing. You know, how can they put on this dream spell? How can they? It's like people are in hypnosis. It's like if it doesn't come from the state or the TV or whatever, it's not true. Like, how can we ever break this?
I think that we need to recognize that they laid the groundwork, I believe, with the technology that they laid out for fun, right? The iPhone is absolutely addictive. Okay. And then all these other, they got people used, oh, isn't it wonderful? We can bank on them, can do this on them. They didn't realize this was the preparation.
Mm.
And you see, so that people look at these, I call them toys, but they're very dangerous. They cannot see that as being in any way something bad, because this makes life easy.
Mm.
You know, Amazon makes life easy, right? Never mind that, you know, how many are now without jobs and without a source of income. That's how they did it. You see, it took decades. They rolled out these things. I first read, and I'm sure it's true, is that, again, you know, Bill Gates is a very, very devious man. His whole Microsoft thing, viruses were in there precisely so that he can keep on changing things and getting into our gut, you know? I mean, this was on purpose.
Mm.
What I would love to know, but what deal was struck in 1995 when Bill Gates was really up? The Justice Department had him practically, totally, you know, they wanted him to essentially undo the whole Microsoft thing. And then he formed the Gates Foundation. End of problem. End of problem. The money just goes there. But there had to be a deal. There had to be a deal as to what information he then gives the government. Because that's how Facebook is done. That's how all of them, Google, they all have government contracts, partnerships. That's how it went. Because they didn't invent these things either. It was really, you know, it was American various intelligence agencies that actually created these things. And then they gave them to, so that they could continue to get the information. And that's what's happening now.
It's like we're gradually, you know, being used to being surveilled. Our bodily integrity is being taken away. Like the next step is like maybe shipping or tracking us. And it seems like we need to really step back and have a look. Like we can't let this go. And
how do you wake people up? This is, well, I don't know. And I don't know what, you know, we don't know really what's what with these vaccines. It isn't a matter that everybody suddenly drops. I mean, that's not how this is structured. And how long will it take? And by then they won't make the connection. I mean, you know, there are many ways.
On something else. It's not the vaccines. If you drop dead 2 years from now,
this is what
cancer. This is not connected. Yeah.
It was said right away when many elderly started to die. Oh, well, they were elderly. What can you expect? Somebody 85, you know? Yeah, but why is it at such an uptick? And so coincident. And they're not doing autopsies.
Exactly.
They're not doing autopsies. And that should give a clue, because autopsies tell whether somebody has had a heart condition before or not.
Exactly. And it looks like, what would you say with the vaccines and the Nuremberg Code? Would you see that they are opposing each other? Like, is there any problem compared to the Nuremberg Code with these new COVID vaccines?
Are they what? I didn't get the question, actually.
If the Nuremberg Code isn't really, if the COVID-19 vaccines, especially the mRNA,
mRNA, yeah.
yeah, sorry,
mRNA.
Because wouldn't it be going against the Nuremberg Code to actually?
Of course, it is against. That's what I mean. It is. That's why I keep saying that needs to be that needs to be raised. It needs to be under the Nuremberg. Yeah.
Exactly. If you don't have long-term studies, and we have experts such as Dolores where similar vaccines have been making huge injuries in the long-term studies. I mean, this is really looking very, very horrible, actually.
It is. And actually, if you think about it, the way in which they coerce children, I mean, that connects to T4. Children first.
Yeah.
They tried this stuff out on children first because, again, they're,
And just today we had Elizabeth from Iceland speaking out today, who's a facial surgeon who raises a lot of concern and alarm about the PCR test, even where, for instance, in Denmark, they're testing children now 2 times a week, where they're even, telling them that they should test themselves, where the tests go up to the blood-brain barriers.
Oh, God.
It's so unfathomable what you can make people do once you scare them, once you bring them into this narrative. And I think that's why we have this, Light on Freedom campaign now. We need to bring the positive examples, like we heard from Italy today. They're curing all COVID cases. Like they're curing all COVID.
With what?
He didn't say exactly the protocol.
But there is, in other words, a group of drugs, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Different phases. They have different protocols.
Well, you see, they're using it in the poor countries. In India, they're using it, and they're not having the deaths.
Yes.
But
where's the logic? Where is it?
But with the censorship, you see, it doesn't get through to the really wider public. I have more interviews to with Germany, and that is very important. It's very, in part, it's because our movement is being described as if it was the fascist, that they're the Nazis when it's the other way around. So I need to help to, kind of, and they are the German people are really much more aware.
Exactly.
They are, and they should be. And I have to yet arrange with Israel. I have to talk there too, because this is.
Yes, there was the Israeli.
Imagine, compare. But I'll do what I have to.
Yes.
I don't make this up. I just connect dots. That's really what I do. I connect dots, and wherever they fall. But I cannot believe how people have totally suspended just the use of brain to make judgments by themselves. Oh, the doctor says, the director of the hospital says, I said, but that's a government employee. In Israel, they have really socialized medicine, as you have also in Sweden. And so it's all government. There's no, I said, well, he could lose his job very simply.
Exactly. You see this kind of in Sweden as well, where we haven't had that many restrictions or lockdowns and masks in the same way. We have the Folkhälsomyndigheten and the Public Health Agency, who are actually, holding the scientific base much better. And then you see the politicians,
how they interpret,
how they, put in the pandemic laws. They make actions that they're not actually, you know, medical professionals. And actually in Sweden, I've challenged them to actually say, what is your scientific base of these actions? I haven't gotten any reply yet.
Well,
Because we need to start asking the questions to the people in power. What is the basis for these decisions?
they just fluff it off. It's, oh, we know, you know.
Yeah,
Look at, we have this, you know, Anthony Fauci. He knew very well. You see, he's been at the helm, at the top of the National Institute Allergies and Infectious Disease since 1984. So he knows. He doesn't treat patients yet. I don't think if he ever. But aside from that, he knows what the, you know, what the science is, and he lies without any problem. And he flip-flops, you know, 1 month. Oh, masks are nothing. That was early on, right? In April. He said, oh, no. If people feel like it, it makes them feel good. That was his attitude. So that made sense, actually. But then they realized, you see, the masking is so demeaning. It's so dehumanizing. You can't see expressions. Children are growing up without knowing if somebody's smiling or growling. I mean, that's deprivation.
And as a teacher, I know, I mean, that is a language that
Yes.
learning. The body language and the face, that is a language. And the kids won't see that growing up. And it is
absolutely horrific. It's horrific. They want to do everything like this through Zoom. No, I'm sorry. That's not education through, you know, long. They also do it with medicine. You know?
Exactly.
So there, you know, a lot of things. Technology is something that the Nazis were very, very in awe of, as is the whole West and the United States, of course. No, really, technology has been regarded as, oh, this is the greatest, you know, everything is going to be great with technology. I hate to.
Yeah, and that's why we see, you know, this fraud and this corruption happening in so many areas, like economy and medicine and you know, all these different areas of our society. And that's why, you know, the World Freedom Alliance, I'm very proud that so many brave people like you, like Henna, Dolores, Heiko, you know, Children's Health Defense, so many people from all over the world actually are also coming from all these different fields, because that's what I believe. We need to do the same. We need to collect people from all different walks of life.
Oh, absolutely.
That tell the truth in their area. Like for me as a teacher, I can say that we have a whole generation of children who are not getting their education.
No.
And I became a teacher because education is a fundamental, you know, something
it's
that's
their right.
Society.
It's children's right.
Exactly.
In the West, we've seen that as an absolute right to an education.
It's like all these human things, like breathing, like connection, like education, like, you know.
Culture,
yes,
no theater, no music.
All of these
everything's
human things are being hacked.
This is all calculated. It's absolutely calculated in a sense to, it's like if you don't give a plant, a flower, water. That's what they're doing. They're taking away the water, you know, the things that really make human life possible and all that. No,
I think that is really the solution, isn't it? Just like helping people see where this is heading.
Yes.
So many are still stuck in this belief that this is a temporary measure, this is a necessity.
They don't realize that they were already saying every 6 months they'll need another booster.
Yeah. And the next pandemic and the next pandemic, and it's a tactic of, it's a war tactic, way to wage war.
It is. No, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm really afraid they can spray things. They tested spraying. They've done that.
I know in Sweden they're also, you know, experimenting on, you know, they say it's because of the global warming. There's a filter to reflect the sunlight. So like
there's a lot of areas, you know, that really there are things in real ethics there are things you're not supposed to do. The natural order is the natural order. It's one thing to make life easier and all that, that's fine. But when you really go and tinker, as they are, with the DNA and with that, I wish there were some out there, you know, smarter, whatever they are, you know, come and help. We need extraterrestrial. Because
it's hard, you know, we were speaking to Sara Conial, the Italian parliamentarian, earlier in this whistleblowing event. It's hard, you know, when there's so much corruption in the politics and in the different companies. I know you've spoken about that as well, how the Nazi regime didn't really go away, how it just transformed. And you spoke about IBM. Could you just tell a little bit about your knowledge about this before we end?
Well, they had you know, partnerships and contracts. Not Sweden, but Switzerland was totally Nazified. They had it. They didn't get their reputation tarnished, but they were totally involved in the money, everything. And this Schwab, his father, and he too, that was a Swiss company, and they had, you know, in Germany they had the what do you call it? The branch, and yeah, doing armament and stuff that weren't supposed to. Now, you know, the banks, as we know, I mean, they had, actually, I'll tell you, one of the first that began the locating and pulling back artworks that had belonged to Jews and were confiscated, and it was many years ago. I used to be involved with art, and so I perused. And it was one of I don't remember which particular magazine, Art in America or something like that, but there was an investigative report about stolen art and where it was and all that. And that began the eventual reparations for that. Now, in Switzerland, they had all these bank accounts, you know, the numbered bank accounts. So some of them is, you know, the drug dealers and whoever has to hide their money. And the same thing with confiscated money. That was all in Switzerland. And since those who, let's say Jews who sent their money to Switzerland so that if they escape, they can have, you know, something abroad, and they didn't escape, the banks merely took it. You see, so there are many ways of aiding and abetting this kind of regime, and that's what they were doing. You don't all have to be, you know, in armor and all that.
Yes, exactly.
And in fact, the ones not in armor are the ones who are calling the shots, who are making the policy decisions. And so some of that comes out in this investigative report, because they were, it was totally in collaboration. And yeah, I mean, the Nazis gave them, the branch in Ravensburg gave them like a medal, like an honor. They're such a great factory. Sure. They were doing their bidding.
Hi, Dolores. Welcome back. And I'm thinking to end up there, because we are in the World Freedom Alliance having a project accountability, you know, holding people to account that are responsible for these crimes that we see going on. And we would be, of course, honored to have you as a part of this, and as a very important part with your knowledge and your background. But it's, how would you say we could hold these people to account? Do you think it's possible?
Well, it's worth, you know, I guess one has to talk to Reiner about that, because it's really, the courts are the only way. Frankly, the courts are the only way. And even though it's very imperfect because you don't know which judge might undertake it, but still, that's the only way. I would say that's absolutely the only way. Look, I've read enough about the Nuremberg doctors' trial to know that everybody was against it. The Americans and the British were absolutely against it.
Okay.
They knew that this would tarnish, you see, more than what they wanted.
It would expose it, right, Vera? The investigation and the proceedings, yeah.
But it's more than that. It's actually John, what's his, I'm terrible with names. I'll forget your name next time we know, but truly. But he was a psychiatrist who was with the British Army. And he was just so horrified that he went in a van all over Germany and just grabbed documents. Wow. And he provided the case, you see.
Wow.
And so they were stuck. And that's how it came about that they did do the trial. They didn't care about the military criminals, that they were willing to. But of course, the Americans then brought more than 1,600 criminals, scientists, to the United States. And that's when everything changed in the United States.
And I think that's what we've been seeing for a year, is that to all our networks in the World Freedom Alliance, and we've been doing it from the very beginning, is to video and to document and also to screenshot and download documents and newspaper articles.
Yeah. People need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, people need to do that more and more because they're shutting down, and it's getting more than cat and mouse, but it's really, really bad.
But also, if like, for example, all the time in Ireland and around the world, they're saying you will not get emergency with, say, heart procedures. When I go out, it's people in hospitals saying they won't treat me for a heart attack without having a PCR test, right? And of course, that's coercive medical intervention and not providing.
Everything.
So what I'm saying is record the conversations, record the people, and look at the forms, because we have people here around Discovery. Sometimes in medical letters for appointments, they're putting in extra notes saying the hospital policy is, right, in a one-pager, but it's not online, and they're hoping that will not be in discoverable documents if you were trying to hold them to account. If you make people aware to photocopy these letters and we scan them, that whoever signs their name to that, from the hospital, is coercing someone to take a PCR test in return for life-saving treatment, which is in itself a crime for whoever signs the letter. So that's the kind of accountability we want to do, which doesn't really require the courts, because an individual can then sue that individual for malpractice and strike them off of the registers and can make a complaint,
That's why in the beginning of this, before World Freedom Alliance, we formed People's Court. That was actually the whole purpose of it, was to collect the stories, to collect the actual evidence to future trials. And this is still up and running. It's I haven't been able to put as much energy into it as we want to, but please document, please share, and share it with the World Freedom Alliance as well, so that we can actually, provide this evidence base for future generations. We have lots of amazing people like Reiner, like Robert Kennedy Jr., others, lawyers in France and Canada are doing amazing work, actually collecting all. And
also there's initiatives in the rule of law as well, natural law, common law, including John Smith, Michael Abernathyia, Christopher James, Jesse Parker, all over the world, and in Australia, Manika knows them all, Sasha Stone. So what we're going to do in the World Freedom Alliance is to highlight all of the mechanisms, and also potentially to not wait for a court, to actually, we have all of the people involved in accountability and justice in the world, that we would like to initiate our own tribunals, and then we can compare it to other tribunals. They might take 5 years, but why should we wait when we have the data and the evidence now? And if people can hold individual people for harm, like coroners can be sued by families if someone died, they don't need the courts. Doctors' indemnity insurance can be sued right now people coercing is unethical and unlawful behavior on behalf of individual nurses, and families, you know, can sue principals for the harm to their children. And what I'm just communicating as well is children, I think, have been failed by their parents all across the world. But if you're 16 years old now and you're angry or annoyed that people are harassing you to wear a mask, that you'll be 18 in 2 years' time. So you can actually sue your own teachers, your own principals in your own school, right? That we need to empower people. That's project accountability. And all we need is one child who turns 18 in a school to win a case, or one parent to hold them to account, claim off their indemnity insurance. And that will be the hallmark that we can then, in the World Freedom Alliance, help people to hold people to account. We really don't need the police or the courts. They should have indemnity insurance, you know, in their professional capacity, and you can sue them directly without police and courts.
And we need all kinds of actions and brave people, because it's now this is happening. We can't wait for another month or 2 months to stand up. It's like we've had it. We've had enough.
Enough is enough.
Yeah. And of course we do it peacefully, and of course we do it with love and with truth. But we have to stop it. Every single one of us needs to do something and take action. And so please join the Light on Freedom event and really take action, take these challenges, make videos, do art, whatever you can do to highlight that we are free human beings, and as we are free to act according to our conscience, whatever happens. We are not in any way obliged to have any medical procedure or intervention against our free will. And we need to know this. We need to know our rights. We need to stand up for them. And in the World Freedom Alliance, we will support you in whatever way we can. And we have, amazing people now joining, new countries joining every week now. So we're a big, big movement. You're not alone if you see this. Please join us on worldfreedomalliance.org, and please know that it makes a difference. Your individual choice is what makes a difference. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a politician, or in economics, or wherever you are, or a parent, it really makes a difference, the choices that you make. And we do not want our kids to grow up in the Great Reset, in the Klaus Schwab world. And that's actually what motivates me, is that I want a future for my children. I have 4 children. I will do whatever it takes, day and night, to make sure that I can tell anyone in the future that I did everything I could to oppose this madness.
Just like Klaus Schwab says, that this provides us a narrow opportunity to reset everything. This provides us,
our way,
people, the same opportunity to celebrate natural medicine and all the knowledge that we have, and all the beauty and the, courage that we can demonstrate as human beings. Because I don't believe for 1 second that we are these, weaklings that should be, herded around like cattle, but that we are co-creators and like phenomenal beings. So let's just demonstrate that.
Yeah. So right back at him, we're going to create our world. We're going to create the way that we want the world to look like. And
exactly. If you only, their world only happens if you bully and coerce and intimidate and censor and silence.
Yeah.
And free speech is the basis of all that. But what's very interesting is when you talk to people on our side or whatever, we can actually show evidence like Vera has over 20 years, give the data. And that's why they're trying to censor us and the media and the journalists. Because
of course,
if we get them for 5 minutes, we can say, but what about, because, in Ireland, sadly, one care home, there was 51 people alive, in January. And then, 4 weeks later, 26 of those people died in one care home. And that needs to be investigated. The care staff, obviously they had funerals, right? Why is that not the thing that's on the news? So if we were to use examples of specific homes, we can investigate that for a long time. Whereas if they're trying to say nothing happens here, within 5 minutes, you can say, well, wait a minute, here are the death certs. They all died, nobody died before this date in the last year. Why 26 people dying? And why is it not investigated? You have the coroners, the doctors, the care home owner, the workers, the ministers for health. You know what I mean? So that's in our world, we do not want that to happen, and we can investigate it. And they have to try and coerce, intimidate, not do their professional roles as coroners, doctors, and police, you know? So the truth will win in the end.
Hopefully the end will be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
That we should all be around for it. No, really, it's
yes, let's hope it turns into something even better than ever on this planet.
you know, you said something before, one word, conscience. That's one of the main things that eradicate.
Exactly.
You see, eugenics eradicates conscience. That's, again, whatever makes us human, whatever is not technical and statistical. That's their favorite, right? Statistical significance. And with that went clinical significance down the drain, because statistical became more important than clinical. And, you know, so we're prisoners of that. And the education system is totally geared towards that kind of think. It's
and you know, that rests in right and wrong, you know, and that's what they do. It's just very simply that people know right from wrong. That's whether you call it consciousness or the natural law or whatever. And so of course what they're doing, like coercing or police hitting people or falsely detaining them or accusing people or ridiculing people's reputation, everybody knows that's wrong. And that's why in the natural law, rule of law, it's very simple. If you're doing, you know, act in honor, do no harm, which is the basis of all of the world's religions and all of the ancient traditions, it's very simple, right and wrong, and they are doing wrong and they need to be held to account. I have just a quick meme. I just want to read it. It's conformity is doing what everyone else is doing regardless of what is right. Morality is doing what is right regardless of what everyone else is doing. So
oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, everyone, I think this was an amazing day. And Vera, Henna, Dolores, I'm honored to be with you, brave, amazing women. And I'm looking forward to the day. We'll have a big party, you know, when all this is over. And where
we could hug, not just...
looking forward.
No, really, that too. That went out. You see, not allowed to hug. Not allowed to shake.
No, we need to stay human, because I mean, I believe in the human heart. I believe that we need to just stay human and be human in all the ways, you know, hug each other, support each other, see what's right and wrong. We know this, and we need to trust that and nothing else. And as long as we do that, we're going to make it. So
yep.
Vera, you're a testimony to that. Look, you know, what you've gone through, and here you are, you know, saving the world. So beautiful things can come out of like tragic situations.
Yes, and let us learn from what has...
Monica, thank you for all the wonderful work. I know you have 4 young children and you have multiple businesses, so thank you for all of the work you do from morning.
Oh, thank you, Dolores. Thank you.
And everyone, all of Dolores as well.
So see you in our next big party when we won our freedom. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. It was so good.
Bye.
Thank you so much.